The gavel came down just as my vision started to blur. I reached frantically for my purse, knowing my emergency medication was gone again, stolen by my sister Brianna, who sat smirking 3 seats away. "Your Honor." I tried to speak, but the words slurred as my body betrayed me. The inheritance hearing that was supposed to settle our grandmother's $2 million estate became secondary as I collapsed onto the courthouse floor, convulsing violently, while my parents whispered about my dramatics and the judge shouted for paramedics. 6 months earlier, everything had seemed normal. Well, as normal as life gets when you're 28 managing epilepsy and trying to build a career as a graphic designer in Portland, Oregon. That was before grandmother Dorothy passed away peacefully in her sleep, leaving behind a legacy that would tear our family apart. Dorothy had been the anchor of our family, a sharp, intelligent woman who had practiced law for 40 years before retiring. She owned prime real estate throughout Portland and had invested wisely her entire life. When her will was read, the numbers took my breath away. $2 million split equally between me and my older sister Brianna. But there was a catch that made my blood run cold. The will contained a specific clause stating that if either sister was deemed mentally unfit or unable to manage finances due to medical incapacity, the other would inherit everything. At first, I thought it was just standard legal language. I had been managing my epilepsy successfully for 10 years, since my college diagnosis, maintaining steady employment and living independently. My condition was well controlled with daily medication, and I hadn't experienced a seizure in over 3 years. Brianna, on the other hand, was 31 and had struggled with unemployment and what our parents euphemistically called bad luck with money. I later learned this meant a serious gambling addiction that had cost her every job and relationship she'd ever had. The first sign something was wrong came just 2 weeks after the will reading. I was getting ready for work when I noticed my pill bottle felt lighter than usual. Opening it, I found only 3 pills remaining when there should have been 15. My heart raced as I searched my apartment, thinking I had somehow misplaced a backup bottle, looking for something. Brianna appeared in my kitchen doorway holding my missing pills in her palm like candy. "Those are mine," I said, trying to stay calm. "I need them to prevent seizures." She shrugged casually. "I've been having anxiety attacks lately. Mom said these might help." She pocketed the pills before I could react. Besides, sharing is caring, right? That's what family does. I called my parents immediately. My father Robert and mother Susan both supported Brianna's actions completely. "Ellen, you're being selfish," my mother said over the phone. "Your sister is going through a difficult time. Surely you can spare a few pills." "They're not aspirin," I protested. "They're specifically prescribed for my epilepsy. Taking them incorrectly could be dangerous for her, and not having them could trigger seizures for me." "Stop being so dramatic about your condition," my father interrupted on the extension. "You've been fine for years. A few missed doses won't hurt you." But they were wrong. 3 days later, I ended up in the emergency room after experiencing my first seizure in years. The attending physician, Dr. Martinez, was concerned about the sudden breakthrough seizure and adjusted my medication dosage, emphasizing the critical importance of consistent daily administration. When I told my parents about the emergency room visit, they actually blamed me for poor planning and suggested I should have been more organized about my medication management. The pattern continued over the following weeks. My pills would disappear before important events, job interviews, client presentations, even dates. Each time, Brianna claimed she needed them more than I did, and my parents supported her completely. I started hiding backup supplies, but somehow Brianna always knew where to find them. She would take just enough to disrupt my medication schedule, but not enough to make it obvious to outsiders. My seizure frequency increased from 0 to several minor episodes each month, affecting my work performance and personal relationships. Our family lawyer, Benjamin Hayes, had been Dorothy's attorney for 30 years. During our first meeting about the inheritance proceedings, he expressed subtle concerns about the mental fitness clause in the will. He suggested that both Brianna and I undergo psychological evaluations as required by the estate provisions, and he requested copies of our medical records. That's when I discovered something that changed everything. While reviewing the paperwork Hayes requested, I found a second document hidden in Dorothy's safety deposit box, a codicil dated just 1 week before her death. The language was precise and chilling. If either sister was found to be deliberately harming the other, physically, emotionally, or financially, they would forfeit their entire inheritance to the local children's hospital. My grandmother had suspected something was wrong with our family dynamics and had set an elaborate trap. She knew about Brianna's gambling problems, our parents' enabling behavior, and apparently had observed enough concerning interactions to protect me legally. Dorothy had been a criminal defense attorney specializing in family abuse cases. She recognized the warning signs that I had been too naive to see. Armed with this knowledge, I started paying closer attention to the subtle dynamics in our family interactions. What I discovered made me question everything I thought I knew about the people who were supposed to love and protect me. I began hiding backup medication in multiple locations, my car glove compartment, my desk at work, even a small emergency supply sewn into the lining of my winter coat. But somehow, Brianna continued to locate every single hiding spot with uncanny accuracy. It was impossible unless someone was feeding her information about my daily routines and habits. The breakthrough came when I decided to test my theory. I told my mother I was keeping emergency pills in my gym bag, which I mentioned was in my bedroom closet. I had actually placed the bag in my kitchen pantry behind the flour canister. The next morning, my bedroom closet had clearly been searched, clothes moved, and hangers displaced. My real medication stash remained untouched in the kitchen. That evening, I installed a small recording device in my bedroom before going to work. The audio I captured made me physically sick. She put the new bottle in her gym bag. I heard my mother's voice saying, "Check the bedroom closet first thing in the morning while she's at her client meeting." "This is taking forever," Brianna complained. "When is this stupid hearing scheduled? I need that money now. Marcus Thompson says if we can prove she's mentally unstable, the inheritance transfer happens immediately." "Dr. Patricia will see you're doing the right thing," my father's voice added. "Just keep taking the pills until the court date. Once Ellen's declared unfit, we can all stop pretending to worry about her condition." The betrayal cut deeper than any physical pain I had ever experienced. My own parents were actively participating in sabotaging my health for money. They weren't just enabling Brianna's theft, they were coordinating it and lying to my medical team about my compliance with treatment. I made an appointment with my neurologist, Dr. Patricia Wellness, for what I claimed was a routine checkup. During the blood work, she noticed irregularities that didn't make sense with my reported medication schedule. "Ellen, your blood levels suggest inconsistent medication intake," she said, reviewing the lab results. "Have you been skipping doses or taking extra pills?" "No, I take them exactly as prescribed," I replied. "But my family has been taking my medication without permission, claiming it helps with anxiety." Dr. Wellness frowned deeply. "That's extremely dangerous both for you and for them. These medications are specifically calibrated for your brain chemistry and seizure threshold. What's concerning me more is that your parents called my office last week, claiming you've been exhibiting erratic behavior and refusing treatment." The room spun as I processed this information. Not only were my parents stealing my medication, they were actively undermining my relationship with my medical care team by providing false information about my mental state and treatment compliance. "They said you've missed several appointments, been verbally aggressive with staff, and showed signs of drug-seeking behavior," Dr. Wellness continued. "But your actual attendance record shows perfect compliance, and the nursing staff has never reported any behavioral issues." I realized my parents had been building a false medical narrative for months, creating documentation that could be used in court to support claims of mental instability. They were systematically destroying my credibility with the very professionals whose testimony could determine my inheritance rights. Further investigation revealed the depth of my family's financial desperation. While searching for my missing pills in my parents' house, I found bank documents that explained everything. They had secretly mortgaged their home to cover $50,000 in gambling debts that Brianna had accumulated at local casinos. The foreclosure notice was dated for the week after our inheritance hearing. Robert's cell phone, which he had left charging on the kitchen counter, contained dozens of text messages from someone named Tony Castellano, with threats that escalated from financial pressure to physical harm. The final message was clear: 50 grand by Friday or your family learns about real consequences. My parents weren't just greedy, they were desperate and terrified. Brianna's inheritance represented their only chance of survival, and they were willing to sacrifice my health and mental stability to get it. The family I thought I knew had been replaced by strangers willing to commit what amounted to attempted murder for money. The night before the court hearing, our parents insisted on a family dinner to reconcile before the legal proceedings. I should have been suspicious, but some part of me still hoped for genuine family reconciliation. During dinner, I noticed my food tasted slightly off with a bitter aftertaste that reminded me of my medication. Within an hour, I became violently nauseated, my vision blurred, and I experienced muscle twitching that indicated my neurological system was being chemically disrupted. Brianna had researched online methods for triggering seizures and had somehow obtained substances that she slipped into my meal. Despite feeling terrible, my parents insisted I attend the court hearing the next morning to show the judge your commitment to resolving family conflicts peacefully. They claimed my illness was just stress and suggested that missing the hearing would look suspicious and irresponsible. I should have gone to the emergency room immediately, but my judgment was impaired by whatever substances were in my system. I wanted to believe my family cared about me despite mounting evidence to the contrary. That decision nearly cost me my life. The morning of the inheritance hearing, I woke up feeling like my brain was wrapped in thick cotton. My vision remained blurry from the previous night's drugging, and my hands trembled as I tried to apply makeup to hide my pale complexion. Every instinct told me to call in sick, but my parents had already arrived to drive me to the courthouse. "You look fine," my mother said dismissively when I mentioned feeling unwell. "It's just nerves. Everyone gets nervous during legal proceedings." At the courthouse, our family lawyer, Benjamin Hayes, immediately pulled me aside with obvious concern etched on his weathered face. "Ellen, I need to warn you about something that happened this morning," he said in a hushed tone. "Brianna has hired Marcus Thompson, one of the most aggressive inheritance attorneys in the state. He's filed an emergency motion claiming you're dangerously unstable and should be declared mentally incompetent immediately without the standard evaluation period." My stomach dropped as Hayes continued. "Thompson has submitted medical documentation that supposedly proves you've been non-compliant with treatment, violent toward family members, and showing signs of drug-seeking behavior. The judge is considering an expedited ruling if they can demonstrate immediate danger to yourself or others." I stared at Hayes in disbelief. "That's all lies. My medical records will show perfect compliance and no behavioral issues." "That's what concerns me," Hayes replied. "The documents Thompson submitted don't match the records I received from your doctor's office. Someone has been creating a false medical narrative, and it's very sophisticated. These aren't amateur forgeries." The courtroom was formal and intimidating, with high ceilings and dark wood paneling that made everyone look small and vulnerable. Judge Catherine Morrison, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and sharp eyes, presided over the proceedings with obvious intelligence and attention to detail. Brianna's attorney, Marcus Thompson, was exactly what I expected: an expensive suit, perfect smile, and the predatory demeanor of someone who specialized in destroying families for profit. He opened by painting me as a tragic figure whose mental illness made her dangerous to herself and others. "Your Honor," Thompson began, "we have documented evidence that Miss Ellen has become increasingly unstable following her grandmother's death. She has threatened family members, refused medical treatment, and exhibited classic signs of drug-seeking behavior associated with prescription abuse." My parents took the witness stand first, and their testimony was a masterclass in manipulative storytelling. They painted themselves as concerned, loving parents, struggling to help their troubled daughter while protecting their other child from escalating violence. Ellen threw her medication bottle at me last month. My mother testified, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. She screamed that she didn't need pills, that the whole family was trying to control her. We found her medication scattered all over her apartment floor like she had deliberately thrown them everywhere. The lies were so detailed and believable that even I started questioning my own memories for a moment. My father presented forged doctor's notes claiming I had missed numerous appointments and been verbally abusive to medical staff. The documentation looked official and professional with letterheads and signatures that appeared authentic. "We've tried everything to help Ellen," Robert testified. "Family counseling intervention attempts, even offering to manage her medication schedule to ensure compliance. But she refuses all assistance and becomes violent when anyone tries to help." During the lunch break, I desperately checked my purse for my emergency medication. The bottle was there, but when I opened it, my heart sank. The pills inside were identical in appearance to my real medication, but I could tell immediately they were sugar tablets. Someone had carefully removed my actual pills and replaced them with convincing fakes. I rushed to my car hoping my backup supply would still be intact, but that had been tampered with too. The capsules had been carefully opened, the medication removed, and the shells refilled with white flour before being resealed. The level of premeditation and sophistication required for this deception was terrifying. Back in the courtroom, I tried to focus on the afternoon testimony, but the aura symptoms of an approaching seizure were intensifying rapidly. The fluorescent lights seemed unbearably bright. Sounds became distorted, and I could feel the familiar electrical sensation building in my brain that preceded a major episode. I attempted to signal Hayes that I needed medical attention, but he was absorbed in cross-examining one of Brianna's witnesses, who was testifying about my supposed erratic behavior at family gatherings. Judge Morrison noticed my distress and asked if I needed a recess to compose myself. "No, Your Honor. I'm fine," I managed to say, but my words came out slurred and difficult to understand. Thompson immediately jumped on this, claiming it demonstrated drug impairment and demanding an immediate competency evaluation. The seizure hit during Brianna's testimony about my supposed inability to care for myself. I remember her saying something about finding me confused and disoriented during family visits, unable to remember conversations or manage basic daily tasks. The irony of her testimony triggering my medical crisis wasn't lost on me even as my brain began shutting down. The violent tonic-clonic seizure lasted 4 minutes and 17 seconds according to court records. My body convulsed uncontrollably on the courtroom floor, while my oxygen levels dropped to dangerous levels. The entire room erupted in chaos as Judge Morrison called for emergency medical assistance and cleared the gallery of spectators. Paramedics arrived within 6 minutes, but it felt like hours. They administered emergency anti-seizure medication and oxygen while preparing me for transport to the hospital. My last clear memory before losing consciousness was seeing Brianna's face not showing concern or fear, but annoyance that her testimony had been interrupted. At the hospital emergency room, blood tests revealed something that would change everything. Not only was my system completely free of my prescribed epilepsy medication, despite claiming perfect compliance, but the tests detected massive doses of phenytoin-inducing compounds that were specifically designed to trigger seizures in epileptic patients. Dr. Rebecca Torres, the head of neurology, explained to Judge Morrison, who had accompanied me to the hospital, as a witness that someone had been systematically poisoning me with substances that would cause the exact type of medical emergency we had just witnessed. "This wasn't a natural breakthrough seizure," Dr. Torres stated clearly. "Miss Ellen's blood work shows deliberate pharmaceutical manipulation designed to induce neurological crisis. Someone has been replacing her medication with seizure-triggering compounds for an extended period." The evidence was undeniable. I hadn't been mentally unstable or non-compliant with treatment. I had been the victim of a calculated poisoning campaign designed to make me appear incompetent during inheritance proceedings. My family hadn't been trying to help me. They had been trying to disable me permanently for financial gain. I woke up in the intensive care unit with electrodes attached to my head and an IV drip delivering anti-seizure medication directly into my bloodstream. Judge Morrison sat in a chair beside my hospital bed, along with a court reporter and two people I didn't recognize wearing FBI badges. Miss Ellen, I'm Special Agent Michael Patterson, with the Bureau's white-collar crime unit. One of them introduced himself. Judge Morrison has requested a federal investigation into your family's activities based on the medical evidence Dr. Torres discovered. Dr. Torres entered the room with a thick file of test results and medical scans. Her expression was grim as she explained the extent of the chemical manipulation my body had endured. Your blood work reveals a sophisticated poisoning scheme, she began. Someone has been administering specific compounds that interact with epilepsy medication to create artificial seizure conditions. The substances we found aren't available through normal medical channels. They would have to be obtained through illegal pharmaceutical sources. Agent Patterson opened his laptop and showed me security footage that made my stomach turn. The images were from my workplace parking garage showing Brianna breaking into my car and tampering with my emergency medication supply. Additional footage from my apartment building's hallway camera showed her entering my home during work hours, using keys that could only have come from my parents. The crime lab has confirmed that all your medication bottles contained counterfeit pills designed to trigger seizures rather than prevent them, Agent Patterson continued. We're also investigating financial records that suggest this operation required significant funding and professional pharmaceutical expertise. The investigation moved quickly. Within 24 hours, FBI computer forensics had recovered Brianna's deleted internet browser history, which revealed months of research into seizure-inducing drugs, inheritance law regarding mental incapacity, and communications with unlicensed chemists who specialized in creating untraceable pharmaceutical compounds. Bank records showed that Brianna had spent $8,000 on what she claimed were medical consultation fees with a black market chemist named Dr. Victor Kozlov, who operated an illegal pharmaceutical operation targeting inheritance disputes. Kozlov's client list included dozens of families involved in similar schemes across multiple states. Your sister wasn't working alone, Agent Patterson explained. She's part of a national network that provides medication tampering services specifically for inheritance fraud cases. You're the fourth victim we've identified, and unfortunately, the previous victims all suffered permanent neurological damage. One woman in Nevada died from an induced seizure. The scope of my parents' involvement became clearer as investigators analyzed their phone records and financial documents. Robert's cell phone contained detailed coordination messages with Brianna about my schedule, medication timing, and daily routines. They had been tracking my movements like prey, ensuring maximum effectiveness for their poisoning campaign. Susan's personal diary, discovered during a search of their home, contained chilling entries documenting my medical appointments, medication pickup dates from the pharmacy, and detailed logs of my daily activities. One entry read, Ellen has client meeting, Tuesday morning, perfect opportunity for medication switch. Brianna will coordinate with pharmacy timing. The financial investigation revealed that my parents had invested $50,000 of borrowed money into what they believed was a guaranteed investment opportunity that turned out to be Brianna's criminal operation. They hadn't just enabled her actions, they had financially supported and participated in a conspiracy to commit inheritance fraud through attempted murder. Insurance investigators discovered that my parents had filed multiple false claims about my mental health treatment, claiming reimbursement for therapy sessions that never occurred and psychiatric medications I had never been prescribed. They had been building a fraudulent medical paper trail for months, preparing evidence for the competency hearing. Dr. Torres explained that the neurological damage assessment showed remarkable resilience in my brain chemistry despite months of systematic poisoning. Your body's response to the artificial seizure induction was actually protective, she said. Most patients wouldn't have survived this level of pharmaceutical manipulation without permanent cognitive impairment. The medical team's investigation revealed that my epilepsy had been exceptionally well controlled until my family's interference began. My original neurological baseline was completely normal, and with proper medication management, my seizure frequency should have remained at 0 indefinitely. The recovery prognosis is excellent, Dr. Torres assured me. Once we eliminate all foreign substances from your system and restore proper medication levels, your brain function should return to baseline within weeks. Hayes, my family's attorney, arrived at the hospital with news that vindicated everything I had suspected about grandmother Dorothy's intentions. He carried a locked briefcase that Dorothy had instructed him to open only under specific circumstances. Your grandmother left detailed instructions for exactly this scenario. Hayes explained, unlocking the case to reveal hundreds of pages of documentation. Dorothy hired a private investigator 6 months before her death to document your family's behavior patterns and financial situation. The evidence file contained photographs of Brianna entering my apartment recordings of my parents discussing their financial desperation and detailed financial records proving their gambling debt problems. Dorothy had suspected the medication theft and had been building a legal case to protect me before her death. She knew this would happen, Hayes said quietly. Dorothy was a criminal defense attorney for 40 years. She recognized the warning signs of family exploitation and prepared accordingly. The will's mental fitness clause wasn't meant to harm you. It was designed to protect you by triggering this investigation when the inevitable abuse occurred. Most shocking of all was Dorothy's final documented observation. Ellen possesses the same analytical intelligence and investigative instincts that made me successful in criminal law. Her family's betrayal will either destroy her or transform her into someone capable of protecting others from similar exploitation. I believe she will choose justice over vengeance and use this experience to build something meaningful. My grandmother had not only anticipated my family's betrayal, but had planned for my eventual recovery and transformation. She had seen potential in me that I hadn't even recognized in myself, and her legal protections had ensured that their criminal conspiracy would ultimately empower rather than destroy me. Within 72 hours of the courthouse seizure, federal warrants were issued for the arrest of my entire family. The FBI's investigation had uncovered evidence of a conspiracy that went far beyond simple inheritance fraud. Agent Patterson explained that Brianna's connection to the pharmaceutical trafficking network had led investigators to a larger criminal enterprise. Your sister wasn't just buying seizure-inducing drugs, he said. She was helping to coordinate a national operation that targeted disabled heirs in inheritance disputes across 15 states. The previous victims included a woman with multiple sclerosis whose family had been tampering with her medication to trigger disability episodes, a man with diabetes whose insulin had been systematically diluted, and a teenager with severe allergies whose EpiPen had been replaced with saline solution. The Nevada case Agent Patterson had mentioned involved a young mother with epilepsy who died during an induced seizure because her family had removed all emergency medication from her home. Brianna was arrested at her apartment on federal charges of attempted murder, drug trafficking, inheritance fraud, and conspiracy to commit elder abuse. The evidence against her was overwhelming computer records, financial transactions, witness testimony, and physical evidence from the medication tampering. My parents were arrested at their home as accessories to attempted murder, with additional charges of conspiracy, insurance fraud, medical fraud, and elder abuse. The elder abuse charges were particularly serious because they had exploited my medical disability, which carried enhanced penalties under federal law. Robert's connection to organized crime became clear when investigators discovered that his gambling debts were held by a criminal family that specialized in inheritance fraud schemes. The $50,000 my parents owed wasn't just gambling debt, it was payment for participation in the pharmaceutical tampering network. Susan's background as a registered nurse had been crucial to the operation's success. She had used her medical knowledge to access my health records, illegally forge doctor's notes, and coordinate the medication tampering schedule for maximum effectiveness. Her nursing license was immediately suspended pending the outcome of criminal proceedings. The medical detox process took 2 weeks under Dr. Torres' careful supervision. My body had to eliminate months of accumulated seizure-inducing compounds while gradually rebuilding proper levels of my prescribed medication. The withdrawal from the foreign substances caused temporary confusion and mood swings, but my cognitive function returned to normal faster than expected. Psychological evaluation confirmed that I had no mental health issues beyond the trauma caused by my family's betrayal. The court-appointed psychiatrist, Dr. Sarah Mills, noted that my emotional responses were completely appropriate for someone who had survived systematic poisoning by family members. Ellen shows remarkable psychological resilience, Dr. Mills reported to Judge Morrison. Her ability to maintain logical thinking and emotional stability throughout this ordeal actually demonstrates exceptional mental strength rather than instability. The legal proceedings moved quickly due to the overwhelming evidence. Hayes presented Dorothy's complete investigation file to the court, including private detective reports that documented our family's financial desperation and previous medication theft attempts dating back 18 months. Dorothy's investigation revealed that Brianna had been stealing Ellen's medication sporadically for over a year, Hayes testified. The inheritance simply provided motivation to escalate the theft into a systematic poisoning campaign. The will's secret provisions automatically triggered when criminal charges were filed. The codicil Dorothy had hidden specified that any family member convicted of harming another would forfeit their inheritance completely, with additional punitive damages awarded to the victim. This meant that not only would I inherit the full $2 million estate, but the will's punitive damage clause entitled me to an additional $300,000 from any remaining family assets. Criminal restitution orders would garnish my parents' wages for the next 20 years to pay additional damages for medical expenses and emotional trauma. Community support emerged from unexpected places during the legal proceedings. My co-workers at the graphic design firm testified about Brianna's unauthorized visits to the office and her suspicious questions about my daily schedule. My apartment building's neighbors reported seeing my parents and Brianna entering my home when I was at work, often carrying small bags that could have contained medication supplies. The local epilepsy foundation contacted me through Hayes, offering both emotional support and a position on their board of directors to help other victims of medication theft. Dr. Torres put me in touch with a network of medical professionals who specialized in treating patients whose families had sabotaged their health care. Medication theft by family members is more common than most people realize, Dr. Torres explained, but cases involving systematic poisoning for inheritance fraud are extremely rare. Your experience could help us develop better protection protocols for other vulnerable patients. The sentencing hearing became an emotional confrontation that I had been dreading for months. Brianna showed absolutely no remorse for her actions, instead blaming me for causing the family's financial problems by being born with epilepsy. Her lack of empathy was chilling and confirmed that I was dealing with someone capable of genuine evil. Ellen always got more attention because of her condition, Brianna stated during her victim impact interview. The family spent thousands of dollars on her medical care while I struggled to find work. The inheritance should have been mine because I needed it more. My parents' apologies felt hollow and self-serving. They tearfully claimed they had been desperate and didn't understand the serious medical consequences of their actions, but their own recorded conversations proved they knew exactly what they were doing and had planned for my potential death. We never wanted Ellen to get hurt. My mother sobbed during her statement. We just thought she would be okay, and Brianna needed the money so badly. We were trying to save our family. Your family needed saving from you, I replied during my victim impact statement. You weren't protecting anyone. You were committing attempted murder for money, and you almost succeeded. The personal transformation I experienced during this process surprised me. Instead of feeling destroyed by my family's betrayal, I discovered inner strength I hadn't known existed. The experience clarified my values and showed me what I truly wanted to do with my life. I began developing a romantic relationship with Dr. James Morrison, Judge Morrison's nephew, who specialized in epilepsy research at the University Medical Center. James understood my medical needs completely and treated my condition with respect and knowledge rather than fear or pity. Our relationship developed slowly and carefully, built on honest communication about my experience and his commitment to supporting my independence. James helped me design a medication security system that would prevent future tampering while maintaining my autonomy and privacy. Through Hayes, I learned about Dorothy's final surprise. She had left me not only her financial assets, but also her complete law library and her law school diploma, along with a letter explaining that she had always believed I had the intelligence and temperament to become a disability rights attorney. Use their betrayal as fuel for your purpose. Dorothy's letter concluded, transform this pain into protection for others who cannot protect themselves. Your family tried to disable you, but instead they revealed your true strength. The federal sentencing hearing took place on a cold Tuesday morning in November, exactly 8 months after grandmother Dorothy's death. Judge Morrison's courtroom was packed with victims from similar cases, medical professionals and media representatives covering what had become a landmark case in inheritance fraud prosecution. Brianna received 15 years in federal prison for attempted murder, drug trafficking, inheritance fraud, and conspiracy charges. The judge noted that her complete lack of remorse and continued threats against my safety warranted the maximum sentence allowable under federal guidelines. Miss Brianna has shown no recognition of the severity of her crimes. Judge Morrison stated during sentencing, she systematically poisoned her disabled sister for financial gain and participated in a criminal network that has harmed dozens of vulnerable individuals. This sentence reflects both punishment for her actions and protection for society. My parents were sentenced to 5 years each for conspiracy with the possibility of parole after serving 3 years. Their sentences were somewhat reduced because they cooperated with the federal investigation and provided testimony that helped prosecutors build cases against other members of the pharmaceutical tampering network. While Mr. and Mrs. Robert and Susan's cooperation has been noted, Judge Morrison continued, their betrayal of their disabled daughter represents a profound violation of parental duty and human decency. They enabled and participated in attempted murder for financial gain. The judge's closing statement became a landmark ruling that established new legal precedents for protecting disabled heirs from family exploitation. Legal scholars later cited Judge Morrison's opinion in dozens of similar cases nationwide. This case represents a new category of elder abuse that specifically targets individuals with disabilities during inheritance proceedings. She concluded, the court hopes this ruling will serve as a deterrent to families who would exploit medical vulnerability for financial gain. The financial resolution exceeded my expectations. In addition to inheriting Dorothy's full $2 million estate, the criminal restitution orders awarded me an additional $500,000 in damages for medical expenses, lost income, and emotional trauma. Insurance companies paid additional settlements for the fraudulent claims my parents had filed in my name, bringing my total compensation to nearly $3 million. The money felt strange at first, like profiting from my family's betrayal, but Hayes helped me understand that these funds were meant to rebuild my life and protect others from similar experiences. I used Dorothy's law library and financial support to begin studying for the LSAT exam while continuing my graphic design work. My experience with the legal system had sparked a genuine passion for disability advocacy and inheritance law. Dorothy's letter had been prophetic. My family's betrayal had revealed a calling I might never have discovered otherwise. The evening law school program at Portland State University accepted my application with a full scholarship based on my disability advocacy essay and the unique perspective my experience provided. I plan to specialize in disability rights and inheritance protection, using my first-hand knowledge to help other vulnerable individuals. My graphic design career actually flourished during this period. I began specializing in accessibility design for disabled community organizations, creating websites and materials that were usable for people with various disabilities. My reputation in this niche market grew rapidly, and I was earning more money than ever before. The medical recovery was complete within 6 months. Dr. Torres confirmed that my brain chemistry had returned to normal baseline function, and my seizure frequency was back to 0 with proper medication management. I had installed a sophisticated medication security system that included biometric locks and tamper-evident containers. My relationship with James Morrison developed into something beautiful and supportive. He proposed on the 1-year anniversary of my courthouse seizure in the same hospital room where I had first learned about my family's betrayal. It seemed fitting to transform that place of trauma into a symbol of new beginnings. We planned a wedding that focused on celebrating chosen family rather than biological relatives. Dr. Torres served as my maid of honor. Hayes walked me down the aisle, and dozens of other survivors of family exploitation attended to support our celebration of healing and love. Margaret Morrison. Dorothy's sister, who had lived in retirement in Seattle, emerged as my surrogate family during this period. She revealed that Dorothy had discussed her concerns about our family's dynamics years earlier and had asked Margaret to support me if anything happened. Dorothy always said you had her intelligence and moral compass, Margaret told me. She hoped you would never need to use those qualities to survive family betrayal, but she prepared for that possibility anyway. My advocacy work expanded rapidly. I testified before a congressional subcommittee about disability rights and inheritance protection, sharing my story to help pass federal legislation that would require medical verification before inheritance disputes involving disabled heirs could proceed. The American Bar Association recognized my advocacy work with a Pre-Law Achievement Award, and several medical journals published case studies based on my experience to help healthcare providers recognize signs of family medication tampering. I partnered with the FBI to develop training materials for law enforcement agencies, investigating inheritance fraud cases involving disabled victims. My first-hand knowledge of the manipulation tactics helped create more effective investigation protocols. The Epilepsy Foundation offered me a position as national spokesperson and board member, using my story to educate families about the importance of medication security and honest medical advocacy for disabled family members. I also wrote a book proposal documenting my experience and recovery process. Publishers were interested in the unique perspective I could provide on family betrayal disability advocacy and the intersection of medical vulnerability with inheritance law. Universities began inviting me to speak at law schools about disability rights and family exploitation. My story became a powerful teaching tool for future attorneys who would represent vulnerable populations. Most importantly, I established the Dorothy Morrison Foundation, using a portion of my inheritance to provide legal assistance and medical security resources for disabled individuals facing family exploitation. The foundation helped hundreds of victims protect their health assets and legal rights from predatory family members. The final revelation came when Hayes presented me with a collection of video recordings that Dorothy had made during the months before her death. Watching my grandmother speak directly to me from beyond the grave was both heartbreaking and inspiring. Ellen, if you're watching this, then my worst fears about our family have come true, Dorothy said in the first video. But I want you to know that I trained you for this your entire life, even though you didn't realize it. She explained that the puzzles and logic games we had played during my childhood were actually training exercises in investigative thinking and evidence analysis. The legal career discussions weren't casual conversation. They were preparation for the path she hoped I would eventually choose. I spent 40 years as an undercover investigator before becoming a defense attorney, Dorothy revealed. I taught you to think like a detective because I suspected you would someday need those skills to protect yourself and others. The video series included detailed instructions on legal strategy, evidence preservation, and advocacy techniques. Dorothy had essentially provided me with a graduate-level education in disability rights law through these recordings. "Your epilepsy isn't a weakness that makes you vulnerable," she concluded. "It's a source of strength that helps you understand and protect other vulnerable people. Use this experience to build something meaningful." 5 years after that terrifying courthouse seizure, I stood in my law office looking at photographs covering the walls, hundreds of disabled individuals I had successfully represented in inheritance disputes, family exploitation cases, and medical rights violations. Each picture represented a victory against predatory family members who had attempted to profit from disability. My legal career had flourished beyond Dorothy's most optimistic predictions. The law firm I established specialized exclusively in disability rights and inheritance protection, handling over 100 cases annually and recovering millions of dollars for exploitation victims across the country. The landmark Supreme Court case I had argued 2 years earlier, Morrison v. State of Oregon, established federal protections for disabled heirs that revolutionized inheritance law nationwide. Law schools across the country now taught my case as the foundation of modern disability inheritance rights. My textbook, Protecting Vulnerable Heirs, A Legal Guide to Disability and Inheritance, had become the standard reference for family law attorneys representing disabled clients. The book combined legal analysis with practical protection strategies based on my personal experience and professional expertise. James and I had been happily married for 3 years, living in a beautiful home designed specifically for accessibility and medication security. We had adopted 2 children with disabilities, 8-year-old Marcus, who had cerebral palsy, and 6-year-old Sarah, who was deaf and used American Sign Language as her primary communication method. Our children never experienced family betrayal or exploitation. They grew up surrounded by love protection and advocacy training that would help them protect themselves and others throughout their lives. We taught them self-advocacy skills and legal rights from early ages, ensuring they would never be vulnerable to family manipulation. My epilepsy remained perfectly controlled with proper medication management and stress reduction techniques I had learned through therapy. The seizure-free streak had reached 4 years, and counting, proving that my condition was never the problem. My family's sabotage had been the only obstacle to my health and success. The Dorothy Morrison Foundation had grown into a national organization, providing legal assistance, medical security resources, and advocacy training to thousands of disabled individuals facing family exploitation. We had helped establish medication security protocols that became industry standards for pharmacies nationwide. My parents had been released from federal prison after serving their full sentences, but I maintained a strict no-contact policy despite their attempts at reconciliation. Therapy had helped me understand that forgiveness didn't require relationship restoration, and protecting my family meant keeping toxic people at a safe distance. Brianna was scheduled for release in 6 more years, but her prison record included multiple disciplinary violations and additional criminal charges for threatening other inmates. Her lack of remorse and continued violent behavior suggested she would remain dangerous to vulnerable people for the rest of her life. Margaret had become my chosen mother, attending my law school graduation, my wedding, and my children's school events with the pride and support that biological parents should have provided. She often shared stories about Dorothy's pride in my accomplishments and transformation. The financial security provided by the inheritance and legal settlements allowed me to focus on advocacy work rather than profit maximization. My law firm operated on a sliding fee scale, ensuring that economic status never prevented disabled individuals from accessing legal protection. I had trained dozens of attorneys across the country to recognize and investigate inheritance fraud involving disabled victims. The protocols we developed had been adopted by law enforcement agencies nationwide, significantly improving prosecution rates for family exploitation cases. The children's hospital that would have inherited Dorothy's estate if my family's crimes hadn't been discovered, received substantial donations from my foundation. Dorothy's intended beneficiaries ultimately received support, even though justice had been served to her family. Professional recognition included appointments to multiple legal boards, speaking engagements at international conferences on disability rights and consulting work with federal agencies developing protection policies for vulnerable populations. Most importantly, the life lessons I learned through this traumatic experience had transformed my understanding of family trust, justice, and purpose. True family consists of people who protect rather than exploit vulnerability. Disability can become a source of strength when properly supported rather than systematically undermined. Money reveals character more clearly than any other test. Inheritance disputes strip away pretense and show people's true values. Justice requires patience, evidence, and determination, but it's worth fighting for even when the system seems overwhelming. Healing takes time but transforms pain into purpose when approached with therapy support and clear goals. Trust can be rebuilt with the right people who demonstrate consistency between words and actions over extended periods. I learned that betrayal by family members hurts more deeply than any other kind of violation, but it doesn't define your worth or limit your future possibilities. The people who are supposed to love and protect you sometimes become the greatest threats to your safety and success. The legal system works when people refuse to accept injustice quietly and fight for truth with evidence and persistence. Medical vulnerability can be exploited by predatory family members, but it can also motivate advocacy work that protects others from similar experiences. Standing in my office that afternoon looking at Dorothy's portrait hanging prominently above my desk, I realized that I had not only survived my family's betrayal, but had transformed it into a lifelong mission of protecting other vulnerable individuals from exploitation. My epilepsy, which my family had tried to use as a weapon against me now, motivated my work protecting other disabled individuals from medical sabotage and inheritance fraud. The condition that was supposed to make me vulnerable had instead made me stronger and more determined to fight for justice. I had built the life Dorothy had envisioned, independent, successful, and dedicated to using my experience and education to protect others. Every case I won honored her memory while creating a safer world for disabled individuals facing family exploitation. My story had become proof that family betrayal, while devastating, doesn't have to destroy your future. With proper legal protection, medical support, and personal determination, it's possible to transform trauma into meaningful advocacy work that helps others avoid similar experiences. The courthouse, where I had nearly died from my family's poisoning campaign, now hosted my regular speaking engagements training attorneys and law enforcement officers to recognize inheritance fraud involving disabled victims. The place of my greatest vulnerability had become a symbol of my professional strength and purpose. As I prepared to leave the office that evening, I thought about the hundreds of families I had helped protect from exploitation, the legal precedents we had established, and the vulnerable individuals who were safer because of the work Dorothy's inheritance had made possible. I smiled as I locked my office door, knowing that I had honored my grandmother's faith in my potential, while building something meaningful from the ashes of family betrayal. Dorothy had been right. Their attempts to disable me had instead revealed my true strength and life purpose. The little girl who used to solve puzzles with her grandmother had grown up to become someone capable of protecting others from the predatory family members who exploit disability for profit. Justice had been served, healing had occurred, and the future stretched ahead, filled with possibilities for continued advocacy and protection work. Before I finish, I want to ask you something. Have you ever experienced betrayal from someone you trusted completely? How did you find the strength to rebuild your life and trust again? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please like this video and subscribe to hear more stories about overcoming family betrayal and finding justice. Share this with someone who might need to hear that survival is possible even when the people closest to you become your greatest threat. Thank you for listening to my journey from victim to advocate. I hope my experience helps you understand that no matter how dark things seem, there's always a path forward to healing, justice, and meaningful purpose. Remember, your worth isn't determined by how others treat you, and your future isn't limited by their betrayal. Stay strong, protect yourself and others, and never give up on the possibility of justice and healing. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other.